It's about that time.
City Views, City Views.
What's happening in your city?
City Views, City Views. City Views, City Views.
You got love for your city?
City Views, City Views.
City Views.
City Views.
City Views.
Oh, City Views, City Views. City Views.
City Views.
Oh, City Views, City Views.
City Views. City Views.
Oh, City Views,
City Views. City Views. City Views.
oh, City Views,
City Views.
City Views.
City Views. City Views.
Oh, City Views,
City Views.
City Views.
City Views. City Views. City Views. City Views.
Good evening. We are back once again bringing you another episode of City Views. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jacques Williams, your host, accompanied by my two able compadres to my right, the one and only Mr. Wilbert Bowles, also known as Weebo,
Mets, let's go Mets.
and the lovely and talented Miss Melissa Crofts.
Go Dodgers!
And if you knew what we had to convince and how much convincing we had to do to get her to wear this outfit, you would be amazed and probably very, let's just say, impressed at our efforts at persuasion. It worked. So, as always, we want to take this opportunity to thank the sponsor of City Views, Toth Insurance Agency. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Steve, thank you so much. Thank you, Toth Insurance.
Always doing good work for the community. And as always, we want to thank Catherine Pezzi, our administrative assistant, for all her hard work
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
and helping
Kath.
us
Thank you.
line up our guests.
Thank you too, Bill.
All the best to Billiam.
And we want to thank Dan. He's back in the house with us
Dan back.
after his brief visit to Washington, D.C. Hopefully he didn't get waterlogged by swimming in the swamp. He's returned to us in one piece, so we're grateful for that.
Back.
So tonight we have Murray Williams with us here in the studio. And if you guys know anything about Torrington sports, then the name Murray Williams should definitely ring a bell. So we're going to be talking to him. And it's kind of an interesting opportunity that we have here as we're discussing things with Murray this evening to kind of touch upon some of the social impact that sports has had with us over the last few decades. So we hope that we can kind of parlay that issue into some of the happenings that have been taking place here in the country. Normally, I had mixed emotions about this all day, trying to figure out how we were going to do our weekend review, because most of the time our weekend review is kind of light-hearted and
Exactly, yeah, we have fun with it.
we have fun with it. But I just don't know how we can necessarily have fun in kind of revisiting the events that happened this weekend. It's definitely been on my mind. And talking to a lot of people that have been affected by the events that happened. And I just think that when these things come up, we really need to dig deep and discuss these issues so that we can have a sense of clarity, because when these things happen, they very seldom make any sense to us. So hopefully we can provide some clarity for those issues this evening as we discuss some of the impact that sports has made on our culture. Although I will say, Sunday I did have the opportunity, as I do every year, to volunteer for the Tour of Litchfield Hills.
All right, job.
And it was another record-setting year for the tour, as we raised over $120,000
I saw in the paper,
for
yeah.
cancer research. And the proceeds from the tour go to the cancer center. And my good friend Matt Pagano is the organizer of the event. They do a great job with that every year. And we're out there early, 6 a.m., making it happen. And it's just very nice to meet the participants, the bicyclers that participate in the event. I'm telling you, the last 3 years, I don't know how any of those guys rode. It was hot, hot, hot. However, this year, I think the weather gods might have had a little mercy on the situation. And because I tell you though, regardless of the temperature is, I can't ride 5 miles on a bike, let alone 100. And they don't call the Northwest Hills for nothing. There's some hills,
Oh,
a
definitely.
lot of hills. But the bikers do a great job. They're in great shape, and it's an annual event that
And they're serious too.
that very serious. Yeah, don't get in front of their bike
No.
because you could be a casualty very quick.
Very easily.
So, it's good to keep this annual event going and to keep the awareness for cancer care on the minds of the residents and people who take part in this event. So it's all good in the neighborhood.
It is.
Now, tonight, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We won't be airing our What's Cooking segment. Michelle has some duties that she's taking care of out of town. But I'm hoping that Kevin Whitkos might call into the show tonight.
That's so wonderful.
The reason why I asked him to call in is because there's some interesting conversations going on around the new payroll tax. And I wanted him to call us in and give us some information on that and explain to us how just exactly that might work. So we can hopefully hear from him a little later on
Wonderful.
in the show.
Look forward
Now I
to
saw
it.
Kevin Wicko's Saturday at Camp McCormick.
Yeah,
Him and Tim.
Tim Waldron.
Yeah, Tim Warren. Yeah.
I
They
call him-
give award to the camp.
I call him Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
But Tim's a great guy. He's been elevated to his position with Kevin Whitkos's administration, and he worked for many years for the Chamber of Commerce in the city of Torrington, and he's moved on to bigger and better things. And
He did.
we always wish the best for Tim. He's a great guy. But hopefully we'll be hearing from Kevin tonight. So as we prepare for the rest of the show, we want you to take this opportunity to call all your friends and neighbors and tell them to tune in to your local cable access Altice Channel 5 for City Views. You guys stay tuned, and we're going to be right back with Murray Williams right here on City Views.
Really?
Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome to my block party. Glad you can make it.
The only triple doubles you get come with fries.
Last time you blocked someone, you were online.
I can do this all day. Your moves are just gay.
Using gay to mean dumb or stupid, not cool.
Not cool.
Not in my house, not anywhere. It's not creative, it's offensive to gay people. And you're better than that.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Clean
kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Doug.
Okay.
And as you can see, the numbers on the screen, 860-361-9985. You're free to call in with any questions that you may have. But in the meantime, we want to introduce to you our special guest for the evening, Mr. Murray Williams. Welcome to the show, Murray.
Hello. How's everybody doing?
This is kind of a long time coming, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, we appreciate you coming, and we got a lot to talk about.
Lots. There's
Because
a lot to
a
unpack.
lot going on in the world of
Absolutely.
sports. And I hate to rub it in, but, you know, Lisa has to sit through this.
I do.
Especially in sports.
She's like, you guys, all you guys talk about is sports.
I am a good
She is
sport.
being a good sport about
I can do
it.
it.
She's trying her best.
In being, you know, the butt of jokes. All my Facebook friends right now are all posting that, you know, boo. Well, there's a few people who are like, you know, Boston strong. So.
Sure. Right.
And my cousin Alexandra, the actress in New York City, she went to Boston, so I know she's really happy right now. So.
Well,
She's making a few folks
I'm
happy.
representing, and I hope the Red Sox really understand what I'm doing for them this evening.
Well, hopefully, Melissa, you will learn something tonight, and you will understand why sports plays such a major role in our culture and in our society.
Well, of course.
And as we drag up some of those examples, then, you know, hopefully you can, you know, jot them down in your notes on your cell phone.
Right, but
And
you
then-
forget that I was a major athlete back in my day. I was in training for the 88 Olympics in gymnastics when I was a young girl. So.
You were a former Nadia Comaneci?
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Very
I was with the
impressive.
Flares gymnastics team out of
Now,
Pasadena, California.
I got to tell you,
Wow.
gymnasts have always infatuated me because, now for that, but if you're talking about pure athleticism,
Athletes.
pure athlete, man, those gymnasts, man, they can do stuff that I can only think about. And then if I think about them too long, I get a headache.
But that's why I have the back issue I have today.
Oh, okay. So it's proof you're an athlete.
Yes, I have
You
a
can't
proper
be,
injury.
you can't really be an athlete unless you have an
Must
injury.
have an injury. You must have an injury.
So what other sports did you play that you didn't tell us about, Melissa?
Well, my father was a cowboy. Yep.
A Dallas Cowboy?
No, my father started off as a clown in the rodeo.
Okay.
And he went on to Broncos and ended up bull riding.
Denver Broncos?
I like the references. The Cowboys, the Broncos.
And my father's name was Buck.
Can you imagine?
Where's that one coming?
All
But
right.
yeah, there's a lot of athleticism in my family. So.
Okay, all right.
Excellent.
So this won't be too bad for you.
No, and I'll enjoy it. So now it's time for me to be quiet and to listen.
No, you can talk. You can interject, and I'm sure there. Will
I don't
be-
know if I have anything to add to this, though.
Well, after me and Murray start digging into it, you might come up with a few questions.
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
I'll tell you this. You might be interested in this: the fact that now the NBA has more female coaches than at any time in its history.
Any professional
And that's
sport.
basketball.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's a pretty notable.
But don't we have
achievement.
UConn to thank a lot for that? And the women's UConn
I don't know, Murray,
team?
what do you think
and
about that?
Well, I mean, I think the UConn women have played a prominent role in overall in the outlook of women's basketball because it was something to do and a team to root for and to watch. But yeah, I mean that is college. That's kid stuff. What we're talking about now is they're transitioning into the pro field. So there's more and more female pro coaches. There's more officials, and the females are rising in the ranks of that, which is huge because I think we need it, and it's big for society.
And it's wonderful because women, at one time, were not so much encouraged to participate in team sports, where in my day growing up, participating in team sports wasn't as much as doing something individual on the swim team or gymnastics or etc.
Till Title IX, I mean, although that changed things for the female in the team concept, and it's really blown up since then. And UConn's role as the 1995 undefeated champion team with Rebecca Lobo, I think, set the stage for.
Yes, I remember when all that
today.
was going on.
Yeah.
I was living in Connecticut at that time, so it was really wonderful.
It was a great time to be a Husky.
Mhm.
Still is. I guess Gino is not slowing down, huh?
I remember walking in, because I was just moving into Connecticut at that time, and I was working at a Holiday Inn in New Haven on Whaley Avenue.
Okay.
And I remember walking into the lounge, and everybody's going nuts. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? So I'm checking out the game, and I'm noticing this guard dribbling up and down the court like Flash Gordon. I'm like, who is this chick? It was Jim Rosati.
Jim Rosati.
And then the next thing I know, I see this kind of, burly girl, swatting stuff out of the air and whatnot, and grabbing rebounds and elbowing people like, I used to do to you, Murray, back in the day.
Back in the day. giving them the business.
Back in the day, yeah.
Giving a little bit of the business.
I felt like since Murray had a height advantage on him, that I had to equalize it with a little,
break him down.
Yeah, I had to.
Let's just say Jock has never been afraid to use those elbows.
Well, I felt like I had to take out some football techniques against Murray, man, because Murray was like, he was a killer. But I saw that. I saw the energy that was being built around that, and I knew instinctively that UConn was on to something. And if you think about their run since that 1995 championship, it's unmatched throughout sports. I don't even think as good as the Patriots, have been. I don't know if there has been a team or an organization that has shown that much success in any level of sports.
Absolutely. They have 2 win streaks of over 80 games.
Which is unfathomable.
A 100-game winning streak, which is more than anybody in team sports history. So, they have a lot to lay their hat on. And Gino, the Hall of Fame coach that he is, continues to bring in the number 1, 2, 3 player in the nation to little tiny stores, which is hard to believe. I believe there's 11 titles up there now. 11. And the men have 4, so there's 15 titles up there in stores. And I don't know if any of the coaches had that dream and vision when they first came on board, but it's a reality now.
Well, and man, I was unaware at how much the sports departments at UConn brings in, not only to the university but to the state.
Absolutely.
It's wow. It's pretty phenomenal.
The University of Connecticut is the epitome of college basketball, especially in the state of Connecticut, right? So the amount of money that it generates and brings into the state is unbelievable, unfathomable. I can't even imagine how much it would do. And most schools, build their programs off of football.
Right.
Because football, you can have 80 players on a team, you have 80,000 people in the stands, and that's how they generate their income. But where Connecticut is basketball crazy, that seems to be the focus of where folks have their alliances. I'm actually a great fan of the females and what they've done over the years. So, it's amazing.
Some of my favorite athletes. I mean, when we're sitting around, popping down a few, and we're talking about what athletes were like. My first 5 might come out of the UConn squad. Sue Bird, Rebecca. There's so many now.
Keisha Sales,
I mean,
Diana Taurasi,
Maya Moore.
You go through any era, you have
there's
Tina
just so
Charles.
many. It's just so many.
Absolutely, you can go through the last 25 years.
Yes.
And you can find a player or 2 on each team that you prefer to be your favorite. And 11 titles for the women in between all of those. So that's a lot. Winning.
Winning. You keep on. We like
Just
winning,
win, baby.
Now, Murray, you've taken your love of sports to a whole new level now, where you're producing a podcast.
Yes, sir.
And it's like the whole Williams family is getting into it. Your brother, LeBron, who I accidentally on a call-in show one time on Art Benedict's show, The X Factor. He had LeBron on the show, and I called in, and I accidentally called LeBron. And he was good. He was like, "Oh, thank you, Jacques. What a compliment, man."
I'm sure he didn't correct you too, right?
Yeah.
You can make that mistake, and he'll take that one. He'll be called LeBron.
Yeah.
He loves that. Yeah.
He's doing his thing down at WAPJ, and but talk to our viewers a little bit about what got you to this point.
Yeah, it was a concept that was created by my cousin Sharon Lewis, who runs Premier Publishing down in Washington D.C. And she wanted to expand, so she says we should do something with sports related. And I've always wanted to do podcasts and that type of things and interviews. I've always been interested in communications and talking to the, to the masses. So I said that's an easy job for me to be able to sit down and do interviews with folks and things like that. So she actually launched it the end of last year, and we're just in the infant stages of trying to build up. You have to build up from the ground up. So we've actually started from the basement, and we're building our way up. And it's premiersportscast.com, and you'll see my bio on there. You'll see a few things that we've done already, but 2019 into 2020 is when we plan to take off, and you'll see some famous faces up there. So far, I've already interviewed Grant Hill and Maurice Cheeks, who is a Hall of Famer from the Philadelphia 76ers. Rudy Gay, former UConn guy, Tina Thompson. So I have a little bit under my resume so far. So we're trying to build on that, and in the next year to 2 years, we'll see premiersportscast.com. We're going to see it blow up.
Maybe I can hook you up with some of my homies, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Chris Carter, Keith Byers.
Hey, anytime that you have a connection, we always can use a connection.
Carmelo Anthony.
I will interview any of them willing to sit down with me, mano a mano. I will interview anyone that is interested, yes.
Well, I think that bodes well for us here in this region, because any connections like that we can garner, obviously, helps boost our status.
Absolutely.
And one thing about Torrington is there are a lot of athletes who are here who they may not have made it to the pro level,
right,
but they still support
right
the sports organizations and sports events and activities that happen here.
Yes.
For example, Rod Dixon, when he started the Children's Marathon, he handed that off to Tim Gaffney, and now Tim Gaffney's running with that.
Right.
So, and that particular event puts a great deal of emphasis on children appreciating and understanding the relevance of sports activities.
Absolutely.
in their development.
Yes.
So I think that all these things coming together just bodes well for our community and makes us a more robust community, because as we'll touch on a little later on in the show, sports does play a vital role in the evolution of our culture.
It absolutely does.
So I definitely commend the work that you're doing. But talk to our audience a little bit, Murray, about some of the people that you plan on having on, and what you want to highlight or emphasize about the interviews that you're that you're having with your guests.
Yeah, some folks emphasize folks' careers and things like that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to go on folks who played the sport. They may be current or they may be retired. And we want to tell their story and what was their defining moment that they knew that they had arrived, or that they were a star, or that they were in existence. That person.
That's a wonderful thing to focus on.
So we're trying to focus on their defining moment. And then overall, we're trying to wrap it up into what is their legacy,
right?
And how do they want to be remembered in the sport,
right?
And I think it's putting the shine and the highlight on folks who ordinarily you wouldn't hear from them after they're done playing, or interviews that are done after the time that when the ball stops bouncing, or when the baseball stops coming at you. People think that it's over, but it's not. And a lot of these folks go on to different careers that you wouldn't imagine that, wow, you were a baseball player and now you're doing this. And it's like, it's amazing to see that these people transcend sports and they do a lot of things outside of sports when they're done playing. So it'll be interesting.
One thing I always thought was, when you talk about interesting, was Tom Brady, when he was waiting on his draft position. He often
And
tells us-
waiting.
And he often tells a story about how he's talking to his parents and kept saying, after like the third or fourth round, he says, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to California and be an insurance salesman.
He literally thought he was not going to get drafted and he was going to go somewhere and get a real job, right?
Well, but
The day job.
A day job.
Well,
The day job.
I don't know if insurance sales is a day job, though.
Well, it's 24/7.
That's
job.
That's the day
one of those-
job.
That's one of your make your own hour jobs, you know. But I think you bring up a great point, Murray, because there's a very, very, very thin line between a pro career and, just for lack of a better term, being that face in the crowd. That person that just kind of blends in with the rest of society.
That's right.
And I wonder if you'll be able to bring out during your interviews with the athletes that you'll be talking to, how much pressure that puts on them to not only perform on the field,
correct,
but to carry that image out throughout their career.
If you look at an example of a person who played 20 years in professional sports and you never heard a negative word about him, I have to bring up Derek Jeter and the way that he conducted himself and he carried himself in the mecca of pro sports. He was in New York City where all the action is happening, the city that never sleeps, but you never hear anything ill about how he conducted himself off the field or
Because he
on
was
the
from
field.
Michigan, that's why.
He's a Michigan guy.
He was from the middle, so he was nice.
I believe
Midwest
Kalamazoo,
people a little,
Michigan.
People in the middle are nice. They're nice people.
Yeah, they are.
But I can imagine there was a lot of pressure on him to walk that line and to be tempted to do things that he probably declined to do because it didn't look well with the type of career and the type of person that he wanted to be remembered as. So.
But then that's also hard because often people who get into and when they're thrust into these positions, they are now in the limelight. They have everything they could ever want offered to them on a silver platter.
Absolutely.
And to be able to say, no, thank you, to some of that at such a young age when, I mean, you've got sparkles in your eyes and everything that glitters is gold.
Right.
I mean, that's very commendable. And it's hard. I mean, I do not have any judgment towards anyone who does make wrong decisions during that period of time. 'Cause they're kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, when you think back on it, you know, when you're in your early 20s, yeah, you're an adult by legalities, but oftentimes mentally, there's still kids going on, you know?
And to add to that point, what's your outlook on a young athlete coming up in the ranks like a Zion Williamson? How much pressure do you think that he'll be under to perform?
Yeah, I think that he's well grounded. He's been brought up by parents who actually are right there with him every step of the way, and they're making sure that he doesn't do anything or that he doesn't cross the line and do things that may jeopardize himself or his professional career, because the upside for him is huge and large. If you see what Michael Jordan made, and now you see what LeBron made after Michael Jordan, and now Zion, they're saying could be the person that carries that torch further than Michael Jordan or LeBron did. So he's got a lot of expectations and a lot of people watching him and making sure that he stays on the narrow. But I think that he's a great kid. From what I read about him and from what I see about his work ethic, is that he's got nothing but rise on his future.
You don't think he's a little bit overrated, Murray?
Well, who are we rating him against? We're trying to
they're
compare
talking-
him to LeBron. We're trying to
I mean,
compare him to
come
Michael
on.
Jordan.
Let the kid be Zion
in that
before,
respect, he's his own Zion. And
Yeah.
there's no person that has the physical makeup that he has. You can combine a couple of players from the past. I can say Charles Barkley and Sean Kemp, and that might be Zion. But there's no person that is singularly built like him and has the athletic capabilities of him. And the little bit we did see of him at Duke, it was just phenomenal. And he's being held back in college now. He's being held back a little bit in college.
Well, yeah, under Krzyzewski's system, you have to play under the Krzyzewski system. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
There's very few players in that system that actually got to. I think Christian Laettner was probably the only one that you can say kind of had a full reign as to implementing their game in Krzyzewski's system.
There were a few that came through Duke that Coach Krzyzewski.
Say that 10 times real fast.
That's why I say Coach K when I try to say his full name. But Coach K does have a system
that works.
That it produces players, it produces titles and championships and good people. So you can't knock his system. But there were a few players, Christian Laettner that you mentioned, Grant Hill, that you just had to let go and just let them play because they're that good and so good at what they do that the coach doesn't really have to coach. You know, when the team is that good, he just puts them out there and says, "Perform, guys."
Right.
So yeah, that's a lot of what happens at Duke as well.
Yep.
But back to your question about Zion, he's highly rated and ranked, but the expectations are high, and I think that he can meet a lot of those expectations from what I have seen.
You know what, Murray, I got to be honest with you. When Griffin took over the GM responsibilities at New Orleans and made that trade, I looked at it and I'm like, you know what, the Pelicans might be in the playoffs this year.
I believe you're right. I think that they are primed to be a playoff team, even though they lost Anthony Davis to the Lakers. I still think they're poised to be a very good team, and they gained so much. They gained a lot of draft picks and a lot of players that you build through your own system. See, a lot of teams go out and get someone if they want to win, but it's few and far between of teams that actually build through their own system.
Right.
And the team that stands out the most that does that is the San Antonio Spurs.
Absolutely.
So the San Antonio Spurs build up players through their farm system and through scouting and recruiting, and Coach Popovich, the best coach in the NBA, grooms those guys and gets them ready for when it's time for them to shine. One man goes down, next man steps in.
Yep.
So
next man up.
That's right. That's
next
right.
man up. Well, Murray, we're going to take a quick break here to refresh our audience. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the cultural impact of sports, and especially in light of some of the current events that we have going on now.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to show how sports can really be an equalizer, and how sports has brought people together, has helped break down some of these walls of indifference.
That's right.
And how it's built communities, and how it's, as Emmitt Smith taunts, although he uses the football analogy, he proclaims that, you know, football is the best analogy to life. I think sports can lay that same analogy. Football has some specifics in there that it addresses. But I want to discuss that when we come back after this break. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Call all your friends and neighbors. Tell them it's going on right here at your local cable access, Altice Channel 5, City Views. We'll be right back.
Packers, Viking, Packers, Viking, Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
The pain will not control us. It will never break us, define us, or keep us still. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? Visit the Arthritis Foundation at fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome to Fogels.
Beautiful, isn't it?
You expect options everywhere else. Why not with your medical treatment? Talk with your doctor to explore all your options and find what's right for you. Visit ahrq.gov.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
And thank you once again, Doug. Big shout out to Doug Harrell, our floor director here. Does a fine job of making sure that we're on point and queued up.
Producer Doug does a great job.
Even though he's a Green Bay Packer fan, that's okay.
Well,
That's all right.
Yeah, that's all right. He can be a cheesehead all he wants.
It's okay. We forgive him. Forgive him for that.
Now, Murray, just a little bit on the serious side. I do want to address how sports has become an integral part of developing our culture and society. A lot of people, especially in this day and age, we throw out terms, like equality and racism and things of that nature. But sports has always had those moments that have galvanized people. For example, Jackie Robinson, when he broke the color barrier and coming into baseball, the way he was treated,
right?
A lot of people, were like, "There's no way they could have withstood that."
Right.
But his level of not only commitment to the game, but his level of humanity, I think that endeared people to him and furthered his cause. Not only his greatness on the field, but his high profile off the field. Right. When you talk about the NFL, and if you look back in the early 70s is when John Gilliam came on as the first black quarterback.
As a quarterback.
And you think about that now, I mean, the quarterbacks in the NFL, I could ramble off quite a few, but that has changed how people view that particular issue.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit to our audience about that and how sports impacts our culture?
Well, I think sports has always transcended culture, and it has always been an integral part in how we treat one another. And from very young children through professional sports, sports is what brings people together of all races, of all colors, races, creeds, gender. Sports has always been the springboard or the trampoline towards a higher level of being able to get together and get along with other people. So we often use sports as a metaphor of something that brings people together. And it's not something that is divisive in division. It's something that is inclusive. And usually when you're on a team sport, it depends on if you're on a team sport or an individual sport. If you're on a team sport, you don't want to let down your teammates. And your teammate may look like you and be the same color as you, or your teammate may not look like you and be a different color as you. But ultimately, it's the team.
And camaraderie.
It's the camaraderie, it's the team, it's a factor of that they will do anything for you and you will do anything for them. It's sort of just like, military teams when they get a team of folks together. Anytime
you're only as strong as your weakest link.
A team, that means something, and that is huge. In today's day and age, I think we need sports more than ever to make sure that we put a blinder on people's colors and their religion, and we're focused a lot on the things that I think that made America great are the things that we're focusing on these days today. And I think we need to get back to the basics of inclusion.
And this brings us to the word diversity.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is I just went to my 30th high school reunion. We had a very diverse high school.
Okay.
And we went back, and black, white, all of us together had the same amount of love that we had before because we had that diversity. We rooted for each other then. We root for each other now. This was down in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay.
And, I speak specifically of a dance troupe because it had the same team camaraderie as sports. We lifted each other up and we were there for each other. And the diversity is important, especially in our country as of today. Having that diversity and having that love for each other, no matter your background, whether the person next to you looks like you or not, because none of us on this panel look anything alike.
Right.
Yeah.
Come on.
They're the good-looking ones.
Weebo and Murray could pass for brothers, man. Now, you guys, let's take a quick break
We're
here.
twins, aren't we?
Twins.
Yeah.
Kevin Whitcoast is on the line. So
Kevin, yes,
let's
hi.
talk to Kevin. Mr. Whitcoast.
Since you're talking about sports, can we talk about how the Red Sox broke their 7-game losing streak last night?
I thought it was a Mets fan.
Now that's team spirit. Keep it with them, even though they're,
Yeah, leave it to Kevin to come up and be the ball breaker.
That's a home run, Jock. That's a home run right there.
I see Kevin too much.
Yeah. Weibo just said he had a little. He had a Kevin Whitcoast sighting over the weekend. I said.
I saw Weebo up with the cam. We're coming. I mean, he's everywhere.
Yeah, he is. He is.
He's a man about time.
Yeah, we need to make sure that he's doing the correct recruiting for the show. So he might be up for a raise if he keeps up this this high level of volume that he's creating.
I tell you.
But
great show.
Well, he was telling me, he's like, I saw Batman and Robin this weekend. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But Kevin, thank you so much for calling in on this quick turnaround. I know this is short notice. Michelle was out of town tonight, so I definitely wanted to have someone from our district to call into the show, especially pertaining to this issue that's coming up regarding the new payroll tax propositions. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about that and maybe explain what the SALT situation is and how that pertains to the payroll?
Sure. So after the federal government did their big tax reform, that impacted the SALT, and SALT stands for state and local taxes combined. So they limited. Before, we used to be able to, if you itemized your taxes when you paid your taxes to the federal government, it was unlimited. So if you paid all your interest on your mortgage payments, credit card payments, other things, charitable donations, you could write all that up. But the federal government in their tax reform changed that and says, well, we're going to cap it at $10,000. And sometimes just your mortgage interest alone is very close to $10,000. So you're easily going to hit the $10,000, especially if you have kids. You get to, I think each child is worth $3,600, if you will, for a write-off from the federal government for itemized deduction. So the thought was, how do we get around that? And various states have done some things. And the federal government, through the IRS, has said, no, you can't do that because you're trying to get around this. But one of the things that the federal government has is a payroll tax, and that tax is what we pay in Social Security and Medicare. And so the thought is, let's investigate having a payroll tax here in Connecticut, and that would allow folks to write that off, which would be greater than the $10,000 you pay. So in the last legislative session, there was a bill that says we're going to form this payroll tax commission to study, do fact-finding, and report back by January of this year. And there's only 6 people on this commission. The chairs and ranking members of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, so I'm one of them, I'm on the commission, and the Secretary of OPM, Secretary McCaw, from the Governor's Office, she's the Governor's Budget Office, and the Commissioner Jackson from the Department of Revenue Services. So that's it, just the 6 of us. So we had our first meeting last week, and we talked about, what are the benefits by instituting something like this. And what I found very interesting and very intriguing to me, so we're going to dive into a little bit more, is that right now, as you know, the Connecticut's top rate for income tax, so these are people who make over, I think, $400,000, they pay 6.99% in the state income tax. If we adopt the payroll tax, that number will drop down to 2.99%. And then if you make under, I think it's under $250,000, you won't pay any more state income tax. So there's a silver lining in this cloud, if you will, and we kind of looked at each other, the 6 of us, and said, well, why aren't we doing this already? So we're exploring the ins and outs, because I think it may affect folks later on when they're going to collect Social Security, because you'll be paying less into the state. There's a question as to, do the individual employees pay this? Right now it's designed that employers would pay that, so it's a phase-in of a 5% tax based on your wages. So we're looking at what happens if an employer passes it on to the employee. So we're just in the infancy stage, but we have to have all of our work done by January of next year to report out.
Yeah, and I was just curious about that because how does that affect, nonprofits and other types of businesses that may have either wage or non-wage income?
Right, and that's one of the things that we talked about, because there's two different sources of income, non-wage and then wage. And should we have the same, how do we, if we do some payroll tax, how do we make sure it's fair to all? Because it's like if you're a state employee, you're not going to tax the state who's going to just reimburse itself. So, how do we address that? And we only had our first meeting basically to introduce ourselves, get a presentation from this group that is doing a lot of the data work. We had to get special permission from state statute to allow the Commissioner of Revenue Services to share data with us, the 6 commission members, to say, because it's private information, if you will, what people make in their W-2s, and we won't have it down to that granular level, but we'll be able to determine, based on the information that Commissioner Jackson provides, how many people make between $1,000 and $50,000, how many people make between $51,000 and $200,000. So we'll be able to break it down that way and see by modeling, when we start playing around with it, what happens. And at the end of the day, I think the state of Connecticut will probably make a couple $100 million that every single taxpayer will make out better, because you get to keep more of your paycheck if we institute it this way, and also by reducing the state income tax. And then your federal burden that you'll have to pay will also be reduced, because your gross wages will be reduced because you're paying the payroll tax.
Now, the bulk of the responsibility, is that going to fall on the employee or the employer?
Well, that's the problem. Right now, it's thought that the employer would pay that. And the thought behind that was, if it's a 5% tax, that's phased in over 2 years, so 2.5% each year. The thought was by this organization, the Connecticut School Finance Project, who did all this data and made the presentation to us, is that the average wage increase is a 3% wage increase per employee. So if the employer says, well, I know next year I'm going to get hit with a 2.5% tax, I'm only going to give the employee 0.5% wage. So the net would be the same. That's the thought behind it. But if you're in a minimum wage job, who's to say that the employer is going to say, well, I can't take this additional hit, so I'm going to pass that on to the employee. Mm-hmm. So we're discussing what happens in those scenarios right now.
Well, wow, this is going to be some pretty deep stuff here, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a lot to absorb in a short period of time. We only have till January to get our report done.
Yeah, and how do you determine what's not going to be a wraparound or way around the proposal? Who determines that?
Well, what happens is this is just a fact-finding commission, so we will report out to the full legislature in January. And as part of our charge, we have to have public hearings so the public can weigh in. So I think once we get an idea of the impact of what we do and who it affects, then we'll hold some public hearings. I would prefer to hold one in each of the counties in the state. So if it's up to me, we'll have 5 public hearings. That way every county can have, you don't have to travel that far to go and hear it. And Torrington would be a great place to have the Litchfield County public hearing. And we'll see, but it's to me, the other appealing fact is when we compare our states to our sister states in New England, who have 6.99% state income tax or 7% state income tax, and then we can say our highest rate is 2.99. Maybe that'll start drawing people back to move to the state of Connecticut to say, well, their tax rate's a lot lower than New York or New Jersey or Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And people travel where their wallets take them to some degree. So that's what I think what we're striving for.
Now, would this have any effect on like, say, property tax reform?
No, this is strictly on a payroll basis. So we will be talking about, we don't know the answer yet, as you had mentioned, Jack, about the nonprofits. How do you, since they don't pay taxes, how do you institute a payroll tax to those? Or do you just say, well, for this particular purpose, if you have employees and you're paying them wages, you're going to pay taxes? We just haven't gotten that far yet.
Right. Well, Is there any way that we might be able to follow up and you can address our viewers with more information as you get it?
Sure, absolutely. We're on an expedited schedule, so I think we want to meet again sometime in September, and then the meetings will go up sooner than not. We'll have to come on the show, we'll take calls, or you let me know. And the best thing is to make sure that the public weighs in so there's no surprises. That's the worst thing you do is drop something in the last hour and say, surprise, here it is.
Yeah, that would be kind of traumatic. And Kevin, just to get your views, obviously, this weekend was just a tumultuous weekend, to say the least. What are your thoughts and feelings about what's transpired and how we can possibly put legislation in place to perhaps mitigate these types of incidences?
Yeah, first of all, my heart and sympathy goes out to the family members and the friends and everybody who lost somebody or witnessed that, or anybody who just sees about it. It's gut-wrenching when you just see something like this on the news over and over and over again. Something has to be done at the federal level. I think in Connecticut we are so far advanced than a lot of other states. I'm surprised that they can't get a simple background check required in our country. I think that is a no-brainer. I think the folks are, I applaud the president in that he says the red flags is what we have in Connecticut that gives law enforcement the ability to take guns away from mentally ill folks. I think nobody would argue with that, and I don't know why politicians in Washington, D.C. would argue with something like that. I think that should be signed tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But it's, sometimes people are ingrained in their positions and they just refuse to look elsewhere. But I think if they look to Connecticut, I think we're a shining example of a leader in the nation.
And Kevin, I do have to commend you on that, because one thing that I really do appreciate about your position is that you seem to keep an open mind to diverse views of opinion, and you're not so entrenched in your ideology that you don't let other issues come to the surface. And I don't know, does that require an unusual amount of discipline in your case? Because I think that gulf seems to be getting wider and wider.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed. I saw some news reports this morning about the rally that happened in Hartford, and one of the speakers there, I'm not going to mention any names, just tried to make it a big partisan issue, saying no Republicans are here, so let that be heard. And that wasn't the point, I think, of the rally. And I'm sad that we could take digs like that. But Jock, I carried a gun for 28 years as a cop, and I saw people at their best and at their worst, and people are surprised at who does what. And so you just can't take anything at face value. You've got to just go with it, and just follow your instinct and your gut and your heart, and that's really what matters. And that's what drives all my decisions.
And it's very obvious, Kevin, and as a result of that, that's why we definitely enjoy having you associated with City Views, and you're always available to us, and we really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you guys,
thanks,
and
Kevin.
look forward to another Red Sox victory. I'll come on up.
Oh, wait, wait a minute. Now, everything I just said, you can just wipe that off the slate now.
My fellow Dodgers fan.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I'm not a Patriots fan. How's that? I'm a Dolphins fan, so you got to give me some credit there.
No, I just feel sorry for you now.
I wouldn't even know who to root for football.
And I got to tell you this one thing, though, Kev.
I got my.
If I'm not mistaken, well, Murray might know this. Didn't Tom Brady just sign for another 2-year extension?
He has just signed for a 3-year extension.
He's looking for a house in possibly Greenwich, Connecticut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's spotted talking to some realtors.
Very interesting.
So who knows? Yeah. Maybe
Wow.
I'll run for the legislature.
Well, hey, I don't care what anybody says. They can have whatever feelings they want to have about TB12. But the guy he's the GOAT. He is the GOAT. And I'll tell anybody that, even though I'm from Cincinnati and I proudly wear my Bengal logo on my shoulder, you can't take anything.
Don't you eat those for breakfast?
Pardon me?
Don't you eat those things for breakfast? I think you said bagels.
No, the Pittsburgh Steelers eat those for breakfast.
What is that, Weibo's team?
Cracking on me.
Yo, Weibo's lost it. Weibo is wasting away in Metville.
I got tears in my eyes.
I feel sorry for him. I pray for him on a daily basis.
Buy me some peanuts and Apple Jacks.
Kevin, thank you once again, and
Thanks,
give
Kevin.
our best to Tim. And we hope to see you back on the show here real soon.
All right.
Look forward to it. Bye, Kevin.
Okay,
Thanks for
Thank you,
calling.
Kevin.
Okay. Cracking on me.
Kevin Witkos.
Yeah.
My man. So, Murray, as we begin to wrap up the show, we definitely need to have you back on because there's so much going on, and
There's lots.
we're approaching the best time of the year when you have the baseball playoffs getting ready to start, football starting up. Basketball will be starting up pretty soon. Hockey's going to be starting up. The U.S. Open is going to be going on here in a few days.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of the synergy that really gets people excited and really going out there to support their teams and their favorite athletes. My only concern is I hope that the events that have taken place over the last few weeks, I hope that doesn't stop people from actually going out and doing what they do in their regular daily activities.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about what has occurred over the last weekend is how people come back and respond to things like that, and they rally around one another and they help each other out. And you know, you see all kinds of acts of kindness when in the face of tragedies that happen and occur like this. But as you were saying earlier, you know, and as Kevin was saying, there's got to be simple solutions to keep bad people from getting assault weapons. And that's where we are. No one wants to take the right away from anyone to bear arms. But the types of weapons that are out there these days are war zone weapons. And not weapons to be carried on your daily basis. And that's the issue. And I think that, you know, sooner or later Congress is going to have to get together and realize that we have terrorism right here in our own backyard. And we don't have to be worrying about terrorism that's overseas. We have domestic terrorism now. So folks are afraid to go out and do and enjoy their lives like they used to. But I think that you will see people still come together in the gathering points and to rally around each other and to celebrate sports and to do those things. I don't think it will interrupt our lives. It interrupts our lives, but it doesn't stop us from enjoying ourselves and going out and being American people. And that's who we are.
And I got to give props to my hometown is Dayton, so. And I got to give props to the Dayton Police Department and their rapid response to that situation because it really could have escalated and gotten out of hand. So, nonetheless, Murray, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. It was so good to have you.
And as always, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of City Views. We're going to be back next week with more of what you're looking for right here. If it's happening in the city of Torrington or in the region, you can catch it on City Views. Join us next week. We'll be back.
About that time.
City Views, City Views.
What's happening in your city?
City Views, City Views. City Views, City Views.
You got love for your city?
City Views, City Views.
City Views.
City Views.
City Views.
Oh, City Views, City Views.